Hello, everyone, and welcome to Lattes on My Mind. I'm Hannah.
And I'm Felina.
What are we going to be discussing this day, Felina?
Today we are going to be talking about Jack the Ripper.
Oh, yikes.
So grab your lattes and join us for the journey. So Hannah,
What's up?
how the heck have you been?
You know, what happened this week?
I don't even remember. It was burnout. That's what happened this week.
It was difficult because I had the 3-day work week, and then I had the 4-day work week because we had holiday.
Yeah.
And then this one was the 5-day work week, which is, typical, but it was like...
You had 2 weeks of an extra day or two.
Yeah. Yeah, and yesterday
It's
we
always
slept so
hard.
late on accident.
That's
and then I was
okay.
like, well, yeah, but this is like the whole day was gone.
It's Saturday.
It's Saturday.
It is Saturday. we keep doing a weird accent my sister and I started doing when we were playing Fortnite one night, and we just get stuck in it. But that's what that's about. We keep telling ourselves, talk normally.
Talk in your normal accent.
And it comes out sometimes.
So, is this it? Is this our banter for this week?
I guess.
Just the work week.
Suki is fully vaxxed.
Oh, yay.
She has her rabies shot and everything. So they don't need to see her for a year.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah.
She's good to go.
She's good to go. She's 9 pounds and 1 ounce.
And you got your new internet?
I got new internet, you guys, and it is quick.
It is quick.
It's quick.
Post haste.
She makes haste, let me tell you.
Oh my gosh. That's funny.
No, she's good. You know who else made haste?
Stop. Could it be?
Jack the Ripper.
He should, or they should have.
He should
stop making haste.
He was quick. He was quick with it.
I mean, I know we always make a disclaimer, but I guess for this one it's going to be pretty for those with a sensitive constitution.
Well, I'm not getting into what he did as like,
because everyone
there's certain podcasts. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of podcasts, YouTube channels, documentaries detailing exactly what he did, so it's like,
right.
I feel like I don't really have to do that because you can find that literally anywhere. This is also a reason why I contemplated not even doing it and switching my topic this week. I was like, there's so much information on Jack the Ripper.
Yeah.
1, there's so much information. That's so much to research. 2, there's so much information. It's just another little thing. But I'm mainly going to be talking about the potential suspects.
Right.
Or the potential rippers who they could have been.
Potential rippers.
But so what exactly happened for those of you who don't know? London, 1988. It was in a neighborhood called Whitechapel. So they were also known as the Whitechapel murders because they happened in Whitechapel.
The fact that it's called Chapel.
I know.
Awkward.
So Whitechapel was a very popular place for like the not so well off people.
Right.
It was kind of like you have fallen down the social ladder, you have nowhere else to go, you're living in like tenements and like
Right.
like you have to like 4 pence for a room you have to pay every night, and like if you don't pay it you don't get a room and your room goes to someone else, and so like common housing type stuff.
Right.
Which 4 pence doesn't sound like a lot, but it is a lot when you literally work all day to scrounge up those 4 pence to have a place to sleep at night.
Well, and this is like, 1800 something?
1888, yeah.
1888. So, yeah, I mean, I'm sure at the time, I don't know what 4 pence equals, but probably at the time that was like a...
It wasn't, like, it was cheap, but it was a lot for these people, you know? And another thing that we're going to get into is all of the victims, all of the confirmed victims. There's believed to be more, and then some people believe that there was one even before the first one that they like confirmed as his first kill or whatever. All of them were sex workers. And but they were also like part-time sex workers, and they were only sex workers because they had fallen and like needed the money, and like they never would have done this otherwise, but then like people separated from their husbands, or like they had long-term partners that they separated from and stuff like that, and they were no longer being funded. And for women, there wasn't a lot of work available anyways, so that's what they turned to.
It's 1888.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of progress in that realm. So I was like, what else can they do?
Yeah. So it was very much for like, oh, you hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
Here, come to a common lodging house where you pay per night for your room, you know?
Right.
And also something I found interesting too, and one of the things that I was watching was the housing. It was like you have your apartments. So it was like building 29, and then building 27 was next to it, and you had your room in that like place, and then you had to walk all the way down the stairs out into the backyard, in quotes. It wasn't really a yard, and it was like that's where the toilet was. And so it's like you have to walk all that way. I know.
In the middle of the night.
The way I would be holding my urine the entire night.
For real though.
Imagine being sick and living on the top floor, and then having to walk all the way down out to the back.
And then the one person person's in
I know. Yeah, that's not good. But anyways, so like I said, many of the women, they were like, they had husbands that they had separated from, but then they like stopped providing for them. Or one of them, I think they had lost a child, and then both her and her husband started drinking, and they separated, and the husband was supporting her and then wasn't, and it was like, it was bad. So they literally just took the work as they could get it, because this was such a common thing for Whitechapel, which is also, I might refer to it as the East End.
Oh, okay.
It's East End of like London. That's just the area that it was in. But because so many people came here and were prostituting themselves, so many women were prostituting themselves, it was very high risk for these women, because they were, out in the middle of the night and going and meeting strange men. But for someone who wanted to kill said prostitutes, they it was very low risk for them, because
who's going to see them?
Yeah, it's the middle of the night. They're going to dark, dingy places, so it's very low risk for them.
Right.
And high reward, because you can get a lot of people that way. So basically what happened was Jack the Ripper horrifically murdered at least 5 women, most likely more. And they were Mary Jane Kelly, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, Polly Nichols, and Annie Chapman.
Okay.
So those were his confirmed 5 victims. Again, there's potentially more.
I thought it was more. Yeah, I thought it was more for some reason.
Well, you think it's more because he's known to he wrote these letters, so it got really big. Really a lot of media attention and stuff like that. Right. So this is trigger warning, skip ahead like 10-15 seconds, but he was known to slash their throats to the back of their neck, like to the bone, like way overkill. He would strangle them, he mutilated them.
Oh my gosh.
And then he was taunting the police. He was writing letters to the police.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah. So we are good now. You can listen. But yeah,
that's crazy. That's what's. I guess I didn't realize like that he was. Why it became such a big thing is because he was writing it. Like, what was he saying to the police?
Well, we're gonna get into that.
Okay, we're gonna get into that. Okay,
I have 2 of the letters now. Okay, here's the thing with the letters. Some people believe that it was the newspapers basically wrote them. Like someone from the newspaper wrote
Someone from the newspaper.
Because what was happening was Sherlock Holmes was huge at this time. It was the best-selling novel. They couldn't keep it on the shelves. It was, everybody wanted a juicy mystery they could sink their teeth into. And so when the murder started happening, the newspaper started picking up on sales. Well, I almost said sales. That's not sales. Right. On sales. And so then the first 2 murders happened within a week of each other. Like they were quick. And then as time went on, the murders kind of, other than the third and the fourth happened in the same night.
Oh gosh.
So it's believed that he got interrupted and he couldn't mutilate the first victim. And so he fled the scene and went and found another victim that he could, finish his ritual with.
Ugh.
So that one's its own, but they had started to die down. The traction, like, yes, it was like horrifying and people were terrified and they were super scared and they had like people watching. They had like neighborhood watch groups and everything.
Right.
Which is crazy that they had neighborhood watch groups and they still literally don't have a for sure identification of who this man was. But they needed sales to go back up because people weren't really buying the papers because they had nothing to report for Jack the Ripper. And so it's believed by some people, because of a very not profound, but prominent author of a column at the time, George Sims. He said that the media wrote what's known as the Dear Boss letter to cause hysteria so that newspaper sales went up. And he published that in his column. Like, he wrote that in his column. Like, oh no, this was just from the things. But some people believe that it had to have been, if not like the first letter, but some of the other letters that came after it had to have been, because it predicted things. They, like, in one of the letters it said, my next victim will have her ear cut off. And the next victim had her ear cut off. And that one wasn't published until after. So it's like, even if the first letter wasn't from Jack the Ripper, and Jack the Ripper named himself, he signed the letter Jack the Ripper. So even if it wasn't from Jack the Ripper initially, I feel like he definitely did write in because...
Right, because when did the first letter happen? Was it after, it was after the murders. It was after the murders, but it was close to when the murder happened, or like...
So
And it was sent to the police or to the newspaper?
It was sent to the newspaper.
Oh.
And the newspaper sent it to the detective.
Okay.
Detective Aberline. I can't remember his first name at the moment, but yeah.
Okay.
So it was sent there. The people who do believe that it was Jack the Ripper writing it also think that he did it to manipulate the media to get attention so that he would become a bigger deal. Than he was, like, narcissist type of thing.
Right.
After the first newsletter, or the first Ripper letter, the Dear Boss letter, they held on to it for a little bit and then they published it to try and get leads, to be like, does this sound like anybody you know?
Right.
It was like, it had purposeful spelling mistakes in it. Like he spelled in one of the letters he said, in perversed, he spelled Prasarved. Like, it had intentional spelling errors in it.
Intentional, or because this was someone who was not, like, as well educated?
They believe it was intentional.
Okay.
To kind of like throw them off, to make them look for someone who wasn't educated.
Right. Yeah. So, like, was it someone who was actually like one of them, or was it someone else?
So after they published this, they started getting hundreds of other letters. People were writing in, claiming to know who he was, claiming to be him, like false letters that they like discounted because like the handwriting
wasn't the same
analysis and whatever. But they had to follow each letter like it was a lead, like it was potentially him, because they couldn't not. Like, I will say this. It was 1888. The police officers didn't know everything that we know now. Serial killers were not as well known. We have like psychological profiles of them now, and it's a lot easier to catch. And a lot of people believe that, like, if Jack the Ripper happened in today's society, I guess, then he would have been caught.
They would have found him.
But honestly, I believe the police were doing the best that they knew how to do.
Yeah,
like, I don't think it was like neglect. They were out looking. They had patrol officers, but they also stuck to a schedule, and so
he figured out the schedule.
And that's, yes, he knew exactly how much time he had before another police officer was going to come by. So he had that scheduled down and in his head. That's why a lot of people believe that he himself lived in Whitechapel.
Right, because...
yeah, that and all of the crimes took place within a mile of each other. So...
It's like he knew the people. I feel like if he did, like, if they all had the same line of work, or he knew who they were. And because, like, weren't they all, like...
Yeah, they were all prostitutes. But they were all, that's what I'm saying. Like, they weren't just prostitutes. Like, they had lives. They wouldn't have normally been doing this, but because of how their life turned out, they had to turn to it to make money to have a place to sleep at night, you know?
Right.
But, yeah, he definitely knew what they did. So he definitely stalked them. He definitely had pre-planned everything. He picked out his victims and everything. He knew when the police were going to come, when they were going to be gone. And like, he was quick too. Like, he was bold.
He must have been, because how long could it have been for them to, like, switch?
One of his victims was in, like, the common lodging.
Yeah.
And one of his victims, literally, he slashed her throat with a person walking by. There was, like, a fence between building 29 and 27.
Oh, my God.
And the person was coming down to go to the bathroom because he was unwell. Like, he was feeling unwell that morning. So he came down to go to the bathroom. And it was a bright morning, too, that day.
He did it in the morning?
It was, like, 5 o'clock in the morning. It was bright out, though. Like, I don't know what time it gets bright out. But, like, it was, like, the wee hours of the morning. But it was a bright morning. Like, he was very visible. And he literally, the guy heard a woman saying no, and then went up, and then a couple minutes later he came down again and heard a thud, which was the victim's body falling onto the fence.
Oh my God.
Because she had just been murdered. Like, he that bold of a move. Like, he was very brazen.
And that, to me, like, that's unpredictable, though, because it wasn't like a police officer. It was like a guy just going to the bathroom.
Well,
so,
you
like,
can't predict that, though. You can't predict people going to the bathroom.
That's what I'm saying. So, like, the fact
by.
that he, like, you're saying he did it not knowing.
Yeah.
In the daytime. What? And they never even saw this person.
Very early morning. And yeah, he didn't even think to look. He said he didn't think to look over because there was a lady in building 27 who had, like, a lumber company, and he thought she was just up and, like, the lumber had hit the fence or something. So he didn't think to look.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was one of them. But the first letter was sent September 27th, 1888. The first letter believed to be Jack. And it was called the Dear Boss letter because he said "Dear Boss" as, like, the opening line.
Oh, Dear Boss.
Yeah.
I thought that was one word at first. Dear Boss.
Yeah.
Dear Boss. Oh.
No. So, like, Dear Boss. Like, boss is the person he's addressing. He's addressing the boss. And it says, I keep on hearing the police have caught me, but they won't fix me just yet. I have laughed when they looked so clever to talk about being on the right track. That joke about leather apron gave me real fits. So the joke he's referring to, some people refer to it as the leather apron murder because he basically was butchering these victims. Right. And butchers would wear leather aprons. I am down on Horace and I shan't quit ripping. This is I shan't quit ripping them until I get buckled. So until I get caught. I won't stop until I get caught.
But he did. Oh wait, sorry. I'm jumping ahead.
He said, grand work on the last job was, I gave the lady no time to squeal. How can they catch me now? I love my work and I want to start again.
So, but this was the first one.
This was after the second one.
Oh, but he had killed. Okay.
He had killed two, and then they got a Dear Boss letter.
Okay.
So what he's referring to is he literally slashed her throat so deep that she couldn't scream.
Oh,
like she couldn't physically call for help because he, like, initially just.
Gosh.
Yeah. So he was learning as he went, and then the letter goes on, and, like, he's saying, like, he wrote all his letters in red ink. He said, I find red ink is fit enough, I hope. Ha ha.
Oh, gosh.
And then he signs the letter at the end. He says, "Good luck, yours truly, Jack the Ripper. Don't mind me giving the trade name." And that's also why some people thought maybe this was like a newspaper.
Yeah.
Like a journalist.
Trade name.
Writing this. Because he trademarked his own name.
Right.
Most of the time, the newspapers will name the serial killers.
Yeah, usually they don't go.
And then sometimes they'll write in because they hate it. Like you hear about stuff like that. But yeah, so that was that one. And then he also got another letter, and it's called the From Hell letter, and that was in October of 1888. So the first one was in September.
Okay.
This one was in October.
Okay.
And this one's kind of hard to read because there are lots of spelling errors in it. So it says, "Mr. Lusk, source," I think it's supposed to be sir, "I send you half the kidney. It's no Y, capital K. I took from one woman, preserved it for you." This one's hard to read. "He preserved it for you. He fried and ate the other half of it. I may send you the bloody knife that took it out if you only wait a while longer." And then he signed, "Catch me when you can, Mr. Lusk." So he sent taunting letters. So there was another one, I can't remember what it was called, that is believed to be from him by some people. Some people don't. Some people discount the letters altogether, but
Were serial killers, because I know we're talking about 1888, were they like, did they have names? Like, was it common for the newspaper to name them, or is this how like it began, that the newspaper started calling? Like, because if it made Jack the Ripper, like if he coined his own thing, is that why they started giving nicknames later on to serial killers?
No, because they had, that's like what he was talking about with like the leather apron. That gave him a fit because
it wasn't
his
name.
A fit. I think he was like,
I thought he meant laughing at it.
I think it means laughing at it, but
yeah,
that's not what he wanted to be called. So he made sure he got called what he wanted to be called.
So it was common for them to do this still then.
Yeah, there was other names that they were giving him to.
Okay. So he's like, no,
like the Whitechapel Butcher, and then the leather apron, and then he said, "I'm Jack the Ripper." Okay, actually, so yeah,
I didn't know if that became a thing later on, or they were doing it. So
yeah,
okay.
So now we're gonna get into who could he have been?
Right.
Who were suspects? And this was kind of hard because Hannah, they had 300 suspects.
Oh my gosh.
And they brought 80 of them in for questioning.
And any of that, like, gave anyone away?
No. The victims would range from Queen Victoria's grandson to butchers in the East End.
So no one was exempt.
No one was exempt. Queen Victoria's grandson was like, it couldn't possibly be him. He was out of the country when the last 3 murders took place.
Why was he accused?
He looked similar. Well, his name was Prince something. We'll get into it later.
Okay. I'm jumping ahead.
You're good. But so the first guy we're going to talk about, which was widely accepted as like, this guy was like the main person that everybody thinks it is, for a very long time. But, you can't prove. Our technology is a little different now than it was then, so they have found some stuff. But it was Francis Tumblety. He was an American, and he came to London in July of 1888.
Okay.
So right before the murder started happening. Right. Because they started in August.
August or September?
The end of August.
Okay. And the second.
And then and so they started in August. And he came in July. So he was
no time, I guess.
Indian herb, right?
I was like, just immediately.
He was an Indian herb doctor. Except that he was not actually a licensed doctor, and he had no medical training.
Wonderful.
Before he came, so he was just selling like herbs and giving them he was basically like a quack doctor, basically. Yeah. So His issue was he had married a prostitute. He married young. He had married a prostitute, but he did not know that she was a prostitute until later in their marriage. And then he found out that she had continued to do the job after they had been married.
So motive.
Yes. So that gives him like why prostitutes. That gives him like that.
Right, that link.
He was a very peculiar man.
Well, he had to be an herb doctor. I feel, well, but at that time that probably wasn't as common.
Yeah, but to be claiming to be a doctor, and he had actually tried to perform an abortion in America before he came over, and it was fatal. It ended up being fatal.
Oh my god!
Like he. For the lack of a better term, butchered that lady.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Because he was claiming to be a doctor, but he was not trained on it.
Right.
And some of the victims had their uterus cut out as well. So
that, and like, if you think about it, if he was like, I know he wasn't like a doctor, but he had obviously like, not to be disgusting, but he had like obviously already cut into people. So he kind of, to be able to be like, go from that and then be like, to do it fast.
Yeah, like he knew how much force he would have to use. And stuff like that. Yeah,
not to be gross, but like, if you had some sort of experience like that, then you already know, like, kind of
where to go. Yeah,
right.
So he was known to host parties, and in these parties, he would show off his collection of female anatomical body parts.
That's weird.
In glass jars.
That's weird.
And people would quote him as like an unsavory character.
Unsavory?
He was an unsavory character.
Disgusting.
So he was questioned by the police. He was one of the ones brought in for questioning, but he was released for lack of evidence. The only evidence they had on him was circumstantial.
Right. Like it's always like, these things don't mean like this cause or this cause doesn't mean that this is like him.
Right.
You have to have more evidence than that.
Yeah.
Like that.
Well, because you have to think too, don't have DNA testing.
Yeah, they don't have.
So even if there was DNA on the scene, they couldn't.
You can't do it.
They couldn't do anything with it.
Yeah.
Because it's 1888. And so it's like they couldn't do anything either.
And I guess like the stuff that he was doing, it wasn't illegal then. Like to have freaking like women's and anatomical parts in jars.
I don't think it's illegal now.
What?
Is
to have
it?
People's body?
If you're a doctor.
Well, if you're a doctor, I don't know. We don't just keep random things lying around.
I know.
That's
hey, listen, people were eating mummies in London. I don't know I don't know what they do over there.
I don't know. I don't know. I just it probably wasn't even like a thought of. Didn't have these procedures and stuff. I don't know.
Well, because that's also like the time that they were like exploring, like trying to figure out human body and whatnot.
True.
So shortly after the last victim had been murdered and found, Templety actually leaves and goes back to America.
And there's no more.
And there's no more killings. So it's like, that might have, that's a little suspicious.
Yeah.
And he was even questioned by, like, he was interviewed a year after the last murder he was in America by like a journalist. And he said that they arrested me because I was American and I wore a similar hat to the murderer.
Okay, but that's not the only reason why.
Well, yeah. It's like, hey, you also are weird and you're not a doctor and whatever.
Keeping body parts and...
So, now we're going to get into 22 Batty Street.
22 Batty Street?
So, on 22 Batty Street, it was a lodging house.
Okay.
And the lady who owned the lodging house, first of all, it was a 10-minute walk from each crime scene.
Okay.
So it's right in the area. Right. And the lady who owned the lodging house said that she had an American doctor lodging there. He's an American herb doctor. Yeah. Indian herb doctor, but from America, So, so that's already suspicious. And then she said she found a bloody knife in his room when she was cleaning his room. And after that, the American doctor...
Okay.
We're not sure if it's Templety or not. She would just refer to him as the American doctor. Found lodging like across the street, basically. Not actually, but like pretty close.
Right.
At the Charing Cross Hotel. And he suspiciously left without paying for his room. So he like left after the last murder happened. He left. He disappeared. Nobody saw him again. He hadn't paid. And so they found a doctor's bag with herbal medicine, clothes, jewelry, and pornography. All of these items Tumblety was known to have sold.
Okay.
He was known to have sold those. So, yeah.
So they couldn't prove it, but like a lot of things seem to point to him. Like, okay, well, the bloody knife. Okay, he's a doctor, so like that could be, I guess, explained. But like, what kind of knife?
Well, but I think it's suspicious that he left. He left, and the killing stopped.
The thing that you said that he had pornography in his thing is kind of like weird to me too. Like that's kind of
like a sexual, like because these are very much overkill murders. Like you can murder, like you can slash their throat, murder them, and leave.
Yeah,
you know? He went after them. He mutilated, violently stabbed them multiple times.
Yeah,
I think one of them was like 39 times.
Oh my gosh,
I can't remember. I could be wrong. I don't know. There was a lot.
That's
yeah. So,
and like how many American doctors were like living in that area though?
Right? Like that's what weird.
I'm saying. That's a little weird.
Well, you say that, but then we're going to get into something else where it's like, how many were there?
American doctor?
Not American. No.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, so he when he went back to America, the public was convinced, like in America, this is Jack the Ripper. He is Jack the Ripper, especially after the killing stopped.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah.
But despite the fact that London only had circumstantial evidence on him, they were like, you're Jack the Ripper. I don't know if it's like, we're America, you know, or something. I don't know, but
well, like no one tried to like the police didn't question him or arrest him here, so like I guess you can't if he hasn't done the crimes here. Like you can't. I don't know the rules then. The laws.
I don't either.
Jurisdiction.
I don't know. I don't know how all of that works. I do know, however, that
what I do know.
Tumblety died in 1903.
Oh.
And he was in a hospital. It was like run by nuns. So he was in a hospital, and they found a brass ring on him, just a simple brass ring in his possession. I can't remember if it was on his finger or if it was in his possession or what. But there was only one victim. It was the second victim who anything was taken from her. And it was her brass ring, her simple, plain brass ring. And that was the only one who lost anything. It was taken off her finger by the Ripper. So he initially, I think, I can't remember. I think he initially left because he was charged with indecency. He was being charged with indecency for being caught with a man.
Oh. Okay.
And so there's that as well. And then that's why he fled back to America.
And that's why he went, So a lot, I could see how this could be very like believable. Like there's a lot. He's an American. He comes right before the murders. Yeah. He leaves. He was married to a prostitute. Like,
that's why he hates the prostitute so much. Yeah. You know, like there's that.
Okay.
And then there's Chaim Himes.
Chaim Himes. Okay. Who named their kid that?
Yeah, I don't know. He was a cigar maker.
Okay.
I believe he was Jewish.
Okay.
He was a Jewish immigrant. As a lot of the Ripper victims or Ripper suspects were.
That's interesting.
Yeah. He was taken to an asylum 7 weeks after the murders.
Okay.
By the police. The police came and they took him to an asylum. 7 weeks after the fifth murder.
Oh, the fifth one. Okay.
He was taken to an asylum.
Okay.
He was described as a terror to London.
Oh, gosh.
He was also described by the people like taking care of him as violent, threatening, noisy, and destructive. He would frequently threaten the staff and other patients, and he once even stabbed a medical officer in the neck with a makeshift knife.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So that would explain why he also disappeared after the 5th murder.
That's right. That would explain why there's no more murders.
Okay.
I will say they got to Chaim Himes. They identified him like a century later because they got the idea from composites. So all the witnesses who said, well, this is who I saw her with last, and I saw this man talking to her, and then she was dead by morning, you know. And so it's like, so they took all the composite sketches and they made they made one one joint sketch, and then they identified that as Chaim Himes. And they got the idea from the lead investigator's cane. So he had a cane, and on the top of it, he had someone composite these, obviously by hand, because it was 1800s.
Right.
But, and then he had someone carve it into his cane.
Into his cane?
Yeah. Because it was Jack the Ripper. It was like the person who got away. Like, it was for him as a detective, he couldn't catch him. So, yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I was wondering that, like, if all the victims, I guess, like, don't know, like, had a person in common, you know, like, had they, like, had a client that was all the same, or had they, like, but I guess you just don't know those things.
You know, I don't know. Well, and I feel like everybody knew everybody.
I guess, like,
it was a small little neighborhood,
yeah, that's true.
But at least three of the more prominent ones were Jewish immigrants with a history of mental illness. And a lot of people now say that some of the stuff that happened, the detectives probably got confused because there's Himes, there's Kosminski, and then there's Cohen. And Cohen and Kosminski got confused a lot because their stories are very similar. Oh. Like, and I think Himes and Kosminski, like, went into an asylum, like, around the same time or something like that. You know, like, it was, like, and then they stayed, like, at the same asylum.
Gosh.
And then there was a lot. Yeah. A lot of overcross between their stories. So then it was easy to get confused.
I don't know. Could be this guy, could be that guy. I don't know.
Even though some of them were from, like, different places. Like, one of them was, like, a Polish Jewish immigrant. But you never know. So that's kind of, like, a little sketchy. And we'll get into Kosminski later. Oh. But for now, I'm going to tell you about the third suspect.
Okay.
Mary Percy.
A woman.
A female?
Couldn't possibly be.
How dare you suggest? So, in 2006, there was a guy who he was like, oh, we have all this DNA testing now. We have the letters
that were written
from the Ripper, the confirmed letters from the Ripper.
If it's the Ripper.
If you want to believe that. And they used to have to lick the stamps.
Right.
To stick them on. Right. And then they had to lick the back of the envelope. And so he painstakingly went through and he collected all 200 little samples that he needed. Because you have to have, like, a certain amount. Like, there was, like, 200. I don't know how science works, but
right.
He did it. He got them. And though they couldn't confirm, like, who exactly it was, he said that based off of this evidence, it suggests that Jack the Ripper was actually Jill the Ripper.
Okay.
And it was actually a female.
Okay, so that's interesting because if it was the newspaper writing them...
If it was the newspaper, then it's like...
Was there a woman working for
the
them?
Secretary probably could have, like, like, whatever. Yeah. If it was the newspaper, but if it was actually the Ripper, it could have been this. But Frederick Aberline, the detective, he suspected that the Ripper could have been a midwife or an abortionist, because they because they can come and go in the middle of the night, in the wee hours of the morning. They can be covered in blood, and people aren't going to question it because they're a midwife or they're an abortion. You know, like, so. And they have the knowledge of the female body that the Ripper would need. Yeah. And no one would question a thing. Not only that, But Sir Arthur Cohen, the author of Sherlock Holmes, also came out and said, sorry, I misspoke. Sir Arthur Cohen, author of Sherlock Holmes, brought forth the idea that it can be a midwife. It could be a woman. He brought that forth, but Frederick Aberline still suspected that it was a woman even before that.
Okay.
Because after Mary Kelly was murdered, after her body was found and discovered, and police were already on the scene, they had witnesses who swore that they spotted her after they were already processing the scene. They were like, yeah, I saw her at this time. And it was like 30 minutes after she had been discovered. So he believed that the Ripper, if it was a female, stole her clothes because, he stole her clothes to try and escape because she was the first murder. Oh. So they probably stole her clothes because they didn't. If it was a midwife or an abortionist, they didn't think, oh well, this is what I do for an occupation. Nobody's going to question it. So they stole her clothes, and they escaped that way.
Oh,
that's what he thought.
Okay,
that's what the Frederick Aberline thought, and then Arthur Cohen was like, well, if it was a midwife, nobody's going to question that.
Yeah.
Especially because they had like neighborhood watches and everything out. Right. They're going to see a woman and they're going to be like, oh, especially because they wrote in as Jack the Ripper. So they're looking for a male.
Right. And obviously they probably weren't suspecting a woman at the time. Not saying that women obviously commit crimes and stuff, but like majority of the wives, like in that case, I feel like they'd be looking for a man. That's just like the assumption.
Well, and also because with women, it is the most common form of murder for women is poison.
Right. And not like a violent like.
Yeah, and London had a female serial killer before this.
And it was poison?
And it was arsenic poisoning.
Okay.
What's your method?
It's not as like usually violent. It's usually like they don't like to get their hands dirty.
Yeah.
Really.
Well, and also they don't have like the brute strength to
if they were, she was killing women, but like.
Yeah. But still. Like, I mean, she like.
Usually they don't.
Like slashed through, like to the back bone, like where your vertebrae are. Yeah. Like. That's
something I feel like you have to know. In order to do it that fast, you have to know.
Yeah. How much force you're going to do. Yeah.
Ooh.
So, the reason... Okay, so here's like, oh, well, you said it could be a woman, but they didn't identify a specific woman. Of the 300 suspects, the only, suspect that was a woman was Mary Percy.
Weird.
Not only that, but Mary was convicted of murder in 1890, the year after the murders ended.
She was convicted
of 2 years. I don't know,
2 years. Yeah. Well, it depends if it went into.
Yeah.
She was convicted of what murder?
So she had a longtime partner, John Charles Percy. They lived together, but they never married.
Scandal.
Yeah. So she took on his last name, I guess, but they never married.
Like a common law marriage?
Yeah. So they both cheated on each other and whatnot. And
right. Like it was
it was not a faithful partnership by any means. I mean, she was.
Yeah.
She was going out there.
Right.
But John Charles knocked up his lover.
Ooh.
Which was Phoebe Styles. And he said, I'm going to marry her. I know. I'd be pissed.
I'd be pissed.
Girl, when I tell you, oh, I'm not good enough to marry, but you're going to go marry her because you got her pregnant.
Yeah, why weren't they? Yeah.
Because they were long-term partners. And so he was like, I'm going to go marry her because she's pregnant. But they continued to see each other. They continued to be with each other.
Right.
After he married Phoebe Styles. So after Phoebe gave birth, Mary lured Phoebe to her place and for tea. She said, let's get some tea. You know, you've just had a baby. Let's get you out of the house and we can catch up. And this was on October 24th. And she slit her throat brutally slit her throat. And then for her baby, she smothered the baby and she threw it out onto the street. She smothered the baby, threw it out, slit her throat.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And then this is kind of like, this is where it turns for me from she's the Ripper to she knew the Ripper.
Oh.
Then she was charged, before she got put to death, she put out an ad in a Spanish newspaper, which is like, well, what the heck?
Newspaper?
Why are you putting out an ad in a Spanish newspaper? And that's a very cryptic message. First of all, after she got convicted, she said, I can't remember exactly what she said, but it was kind of like suggesting that she should have been charged for more than one murder. Basically,
like,
it was like, yeah, you know, like, they're not wrong, but they're still not right. Like, yes, I did kill her,
like,
but they're not right. Like, this isn't all I should, you know, it's kind of like suggesting that she should have gotten more, but she's already being put to death, so it doesn't matter. But in her ad, she said, quote, MECP, last wish of MEW, have not betrayed. And that was it. That was the message.
MECP.
That was the ad she put out.
Okay.
Now, her maiden initials were MEW. She was Mary Elizabeth, Mary Eleanor, something like that. And I can't remember what her original last name was, but that could be her initials. So last wish of MEW could be her initials.
Yeah.
And if you look back at the Ripper victims, it was MECP. Mary was the first one. Elizabeth was the second one. Catherine was the third one. Polly was the fourth one. So the only thing not included was Annie, the fifth victim. But it's also important to note that the fifth victim, Annie, was found in her apartment. She was not found out on the street.
Oh.
So okay. But she's still believed to be a Ripper victim, but so it's like, I don't know if maybe. So to me,
she knew.
This suggests that she knew who Jack the Ripper was.
And she hadn't betrayed him.
And she needed to get a message to him that she hadn't betrayed him.
Yeah.
That she kept her mouth shut.
Yeah.
And that,
like, she was
and then telling him that she was going to die. These are my last wishes. You don't have to worry about me anymore.
What are her last wishes, though?
I think the last wishes part was to get a message to Jack the Ripper, I'm being put to death. Oh. Like,
okay.
The MECP, hey, these are your victims. Last wishes of MEW, I'm gonna die.
Right.
I'm not betraying you, though. I'm keeping my mouth shut. That to me is what that suggests. Because otherwise, I don't know what the heck she means by that. If she was the Ripper, you know,
right?
Or if maybe she was working with an accomplice.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, what if she was the accomplice? Though, what if she was helping Jack the Ripper?
Like, she helped with those four, and then Jack the Ripper did the fifth one on his own, or something. Yeah.
And then, like, she obviously killed, because you said she slit her throat, like the lady as well. So maybe she took on like what she had learned from Jack the Ripper. Yeah. Ooh. Mm-hmm. Creepy.
Yeah. So that's what.
Because her husband's initials weren't mentioned there. What was his name?
She didn't. She was never married. She had a long-term partner.
But I just thought because the P, but Polly, you said, yeah. I guess I was like,
Polly, yeah. Piercy.
Piercy was her like.
Percy,
whatever.
It was her John Charles.
Oh, John Charles.
Name,
okay, so he wasn't. Yeah.
But she took on his name after.
Right.
After they had been together for so long.
Okay. Interesting.
So now we're gonna get into our last suspect.
Oh boy.
And again, this one comes back into, if you look up today, identity of Jack the Ripper.
Right.
This man's name comes up.
Okay.
So it was Tumblety for the longest time, but then with some testing,
some DNA
samples that they had gotten, it is very likely to be this man. Okay. And this is Aaron Kosminski.
Aaron Kosminski.
And there's also an explanation for where the killing stopped.
Okay.
That we'll get into. But this was another mentally ill Jewish immigrant.
Okay.
He was a Polish barber, so he had access to knives. Very sharp ones.
Okay. Yes, very, yeah.
He, on one of the victims, the fourth victim, Catherine Eddowes. So that was the one who he had initially went to, the first victim, the third victim, he went to kill, and then he got interrupted.
Oh, and he got interrupted, yeah.
And so then he went and he killed Catherine Eddowes.
Okay.
And then he mutilated her. So there was a stained silk shawl found next to her body. And it was stained with semen and blood.
Ugh.
So the blood very well could have been hers. And nobody knew that, but there was also semen. And so they kept it. I don't know.
Well, evidence.
I mean, yeah, but I don't know why they kept it so long. I guess because the Ripper murders were so big that they were like, you never know.
You never know.
But so they were able to find through DNA testing that it was
this man?
At least this man's semen.
Okay.
Again, she was a prostitute.
Yeah.
So it could be that was just that.
That's it. Yeah.
However, Aaron Kosminski is known to have a hatred for women and have strong homicidal tendencies. He lived with his brother and sister, so it was believed that his brother took over like a guardianship of him and his sister.
Okay.
And so he had a place. It wasn't like they were living in a common lodging house. They had a place to go back to every night. Mm-hmm. And there is a sixth person who some people now believe is the original victim.
Okay.
Of Jack the Ripper. And where she was murdered is like not even a meter, like not even a mile away. Like, it's like just a few feet away from where him and his siblings lived.
Okay.
So it's also believed, I don't know if you know any like criminal psychology, it's also believed that the first murder of a serial killer happens the closest to their home.
Oh.
So he was pretty close.
Yeah.
He was pretty close.
Yeah.
Part of the reason that he wasn't really on the radar of the cops very much until later is because he lived with a family. He had his family with him. He lived with his brother and his sister.
That's not, you think that
he had people there.
Was he one of the ones questioned, though? Was he questioned during this time?
I don't think he was questioned.
Oh, wow, okay.
He was a suspect.
He was a suspect, but he wasn't questioned.
I don't think he was questioned.
Okay.
But again, there was 300 suspects.
Yeah.
So, he was a suspect, but it's also believed that the Ripper, not Aaron Kosminski, but the Ripper, went home on the night of the double event, the double murder. He went home and changed and then went back out.
Oh.
Because what prostitute is going to come up to you if you're covered in blood?
Right. No.
After the Rippers are, you know. So it's believed that he went home and changed and then went back out. And he is like smack dab in the middle of the two.
Lives in the middle?
Yeah. Yeah. So he had plenty. He would have been able to.
No, I'll just pass by and.
Oh, I'm going to run back to the house, change, and then go back this way.
Yeah.
Because they'll all be that way because.
Yeah.
There's a body discovered by then.
Yeah.
The bodies were discovered quick. Like he had like.
Because people were.
Something like he escaped by the skin of his teeth on some of these. Like literally. Like he barely escaped on some of these. Yeah. Like they were fast.
Yeah.
But so it's believed that could have happened, and he very well could have just like run home, changed, gone back out.
And his siblings didn't see anything.
That's what's bizarre. But he had a room. I'm sure, like like a room that he went to.
Well, yeah.
And I mean, it's the middle of the night, so they're probably sleeping.
Yeah.
So he probably came in quietly, changed, went back out. You never know.
Yeah.
He has a history of mental illness.
Right.
He claimed that the voices in his head told him to behave violently.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
And the only reason he was on the police's radar was that they, after Mary Kelly's death, they started going house to house and just, we need information. Do you know anything? Did you see anything? You know?
Right.
Like, they're desperate at this point. And so that's when they knocked on the Kosminski's door, and he was obviously not all there. And so then they started having people watch him. They had officers watching him, just to, you know, roll him out, whatever. So that explains why the killings may have stopped.
Okay, because then he was being watched.
You know, he's being watched. He can't, you know, they're following him. He can't go out and kill anybody while the police are following him. He's going to get caught. But then in 1890, his siblings sent him into an insane asylum because he tried to attack his sister with a knife. And he hopped around between asylum to asylum and asylum. He was here, and then he moved there, and then he moved there until 1919, where he died of gangrene.
Okay.
So.
And the biggest thing of evidence they have is because of like the scarf.
Yeah.
Okay.
With his semen on it, which is like he could have just, you know,
prostitute. But yeah, I mean, obviously he has some sort of. I mean, he tried to kill his sister.
But he has mental illness. He was on the police's radar.
Women.
He's known for hating women and having homicidal tendencies.
Yeah.
He and a lot.
Yeah.
Well, and sometimes for me, it's like, okay, so he was being watched, and the voices in his head were causing him to be violent. They were telling him to do these things. Right. Okay. So then the voices in his head aren't stopping, but he can't do anything.
He can't do it
because the police are watching him. So then he tries to take it out on his sister, and then he gets locked up.
That's what I'm saying.
And then that's why the killings. Because for me, the killings aren't just going to stop. Nobody's going to stop after 5 people die.
That's what I'm saying. Like, you know? There had to be some reason why they stopped. Yeah. I was like, not only 5, but like it seems like it was like such a
because everybody talks about Jack the Ripper.
Yeah, exactly.
So you think there's like 25 victims? No, there was only like 5, maybe 6, maybe more.
Yeah,
but like confirmed 5 victims of Jack the Ripper. You know, so it's like, but it was so big because it caused mass hysteria.
Right, and it only happened in like how many months? It was fast, right?
August, September, October.
August, September, October. That's it. 3 months. 5 people. So, like, if you're on that kind of rampage, I feel like you would have kept going unless you were stopped.
And that's what he said in his letter. I'm not going to stop until I get caught.
Yeah.
Which the police did take him to the asylum.
Right. Yeah.
So,
how long after did he try to hurt his sister?
A year.
So he'd been like, were they still watching him though? That's the thing. Like, would they keep watching him that long?
Well, and I don't know either if like,
or
the police were watching him.
Yeah. So
then if like it's like, oh well, how do I know if they're actually gone? You know. Yeah. But he lived in Whitechapel. He fits the bill.
Yeah.
You know, like he knew exactly when the police would move. He knew the patterns of the police, so he knew how much time he had and.
Right.
Yeah.
Dang. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Wow.
I think that, okay, if it wasn't Aaron, I think that maybe the Ripper was close to being caught. Like, he had a close encounter. And so that kind of, like, scared him to leaving. Or maybe he, like, died of something else.
Or, like, maybe he was trying to pin it on, like, even, like, everyone thought it was the doctor. And he went home. But then,
or he moved on to a new place. Is what I'm thinking. Like, he maybe moved on to a new place, which is like, again, like if Mary Percy, however you say it, if she was like
putting out in Spain.
If he knew Mary and then he moved to Spain because he was like almost got caught, and so he was like, I'm going to go somewhere else.
Yeah. Or they were watching so heavily.
Yeah. Like maybe that happened.
I don't know how he would have gotten over to Spain. But...
I mean, you don't just stop after. Like, there's no way. Like, especially such like, if it was like a vendetta and you had like
5
they
people.
were all connected other than they were just prostitutes and they were like a group and it was like, okay, then like I could maybe see that. But like 5 random murders.
Right.
That are that brutal, you're not just going to stop.
Yeah. Like there's
unless you were locked up in an asylum,
or you just died,
or you died, or you felt like you had to move away because you almost got caught, or were scared that your identity was going to get told by good old Mary or something, you know?
Right.
But so I did tell you we were going to get into some of the other people.
Oh yeah.
So Prince Eddie was his name.
Prince Eddie.
And that was Queen Victoria's grandson.
Okay.
Who eventually did become king. Edward.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, Edward.
So he did become king, so that's nice. He had an alibi. He was out of the country.
Right.
Even Queen Victoria herself said, no, I went to out of the country to visit him, and I was, there eating with him when this murder happened. So it couldn't have possibly been him. Some people believed, hey, maybe it could have been someone working on his behalf, like he was putting, but it's like,
why would he do that?
I don't see a real clear motive for that.
I just have...
Now, Prince Eddie he was learning disabled. He did not do very good. He needed a tutor. He was kind of a dud. Well, most of his close friends would describe him as, he's perfectly nice. He's perfectly sweet. He's perfectly caring. That was as far as it went. Like, they couldn't say anything nicer than that. They weren't like, oh, he's wonderful. He's so compassionate.
Right.
He's so nice. He was kind of a dud. He was a bore. Nobody really it was like, meh.
Yeah.
He was kind of awkward and weird and not that great of a person. So I think that's probably why he was suspected, because everybody loves a scandal. And so probably someone suggested that. He was kind of like a loner type almost.
Right. But he's still going to have royal people watching him. Guards and things.
Yeah.
I think unless he had some work on his behalf, like you said.
Yeah, I think it was literally someone had suggested
just wanted
this,
yeah,
and so they had to look into it, type of thing.
Right, we have to. Sorry, we have to question you, sir.
Yeah. Someone else said that the Queen's physician was also suspected.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, but I couldn't find out much about that, so I didn't really include that because I was like, I don't know, but. Apparently the Queen's physician, he was a physician, so he clearly has the knowledge, but...
And at this time, they're probably all just, whoever, knows someone who's, acting weird, they probably just turn it into the police because they're like, it could be...
There was a mass hysteria.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another one was artist Walter Sickett. And he was known to have painted very vulnerable paintings of women.
Oh.
Most of the time being murdered.
Oh. That's
so. Lots of people believed that. Well, okay, so some people he had painted Jack the Ripper victims, but there was also detailed crime scene reports, and I think there was even photographs of the crime scenes and stuff, and so yeah.
Photographs?
I didn't think there would be photographs either, but there are. There's actual photographs of him. Because they also had the photographs of the victims in the morgue too.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I guess at this time, photography. Yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't as common, but it's
yeah.
But yeah.
It usually takes longer. I didn't know that they did it for those kind of cases.
I didn't either. Yeah. Until I started looking into it. But so there's also photographs that could have inspired him to
paint
that in honor of the victims, you know.
Honor.
But what got him out of it was he had an alibi for the last two victims. He was in France and he painted one of his most famous paintings, The October Sun. And it's it's a thing, a little store in France, and so it's the October Sun or whatever,
right?
I don't know, but he was in France during the last two victims. And then there is a guy named James Maybrick, and he claimed to be Jack the Ripper in his personal diary.
Claimed to be?
Yes, he was writing in his personal diary, and they found it, and he claimed to be Jack the Ripper. I can't remember if it was after his death or not, but I think it would have had to have been after his death, right? Because literally the testing on the ink and on the paper that they did dates the ink and paper as a century later. So it's basically a hoax.
Right. No, it's not. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So...
Why would you claim that?
Those were my honorable mentions, those 3.
Oh my gosh.
He didn't claim it. Somebody else said, like, I don't know if it was one of his relatives trying to get a claim to fame or whatever,
okay.
but
I thought
maybe he actually was, and they tried to be like, oh, see, he wrote it, and
no, he didn't.
Maybe it's like the family secret, but.
So have they done, well, I guess it wouldn't really matter. Have they done like the analysis on the letters today and stuff, like of the handwriting? I mean, I guess you can't really do that if you don't have someone to write.
Yeah.
You can't really do it, but
you can't really do that if.
Did they do like.
If the killer is dead, you know?
Did they do DNA testing on the letters as well? Or is that only, because I know he did the stamps and everything, so, but it was only led back to that woman?
Mm-hmm. It only suggested that the Ripper was female.
Okay.
But if he had a female in his life.
Companion. The woman.
He was like, I need you to seal this and mail it.
Right. And it was her. Yeah.
Or he could have gotten like.
Yeah.
If he could have gotten any, hey, I'll pay you to seal this envelope for me.
Yeah. Yeah, because you don't want to touch it.
Not even write it, but like seal it, you know? Yeah. I don't know why anybody would think that because they didn't have DNA really then, so.
Yeah.
But yeah. So that's my Jack the Ripper. Oh. I will say, you guys, if this interests you, I would go find another podcast to listen to like really dive into the nitty gritty. I, first of all, didn't want to gross Hannah out too much or you guys out too much.
I'm weak.
And then also there's so much to it. I could do literally a 5-hour episode on it.
Right.
And then not even have all the information.
Yeah. That's how I feel half the time. I'm like, oh my gosh, we could keep going.
Yeah.
But after thoroughly scaring you all, no, just kidding.
Yeah. I will suggest though, the Morbid Podcast, they did a multi-part series or a multi-part, series of Jack the Ripper.
Okay.
And Elena went way into it and it was phenomenal. It does get gory. So if you have a weak stomach, maybe don't, but she like detailed each crime scene, gave a detailed background of each of the victims and they're wonderful, but then you can also find that on a lot of other podcasts as well.
Right. Let us know if you kind of like a light touch of the crime scene. Like, we're not going to like do like crazy detailed, but like still like the history and the crime. If you like that, let us know.
If you'd like me to dive more into it, let us know and I can do a part 2 later on.
Right. But yeah, so
that's what we got for you. Don't kill prostitutes. They are just trying to make a living. Don't murder.
Don't kill anyone.
Don't murder anyone, really. Don't throw babies out windows.
You said really? Hold on. Wait
a second.
Don't be violent. Don't do.
Yeah. If you feel like you're going to be violent, maybe go get some help. Yeah.
And this is the advice that we have fallen into this week.
Don't murder people.
Don't do that.